Howdy tubers, welcome back to the Zach Life. So I got something I thought y'all might be a little bit interested in. This is probably one of the last, if not the very last, commercially operated Oklahoma jacks powered by a rod line. This well was drilled in 1959. It's 450 feet deep, 458 or something like that. This well makes about 1.7 barrels of oil a day. It's a pretty good little well for what it is. This is actually the where you hear the terminology pump jack. This is an actual pump jack. The things you see with electric motors on them, those are not, those are pumping units. A lot of people call them pump jacks, but this is an actual pump jack. These are known as an Oklahoma jack, a direct lift jack, a Norris jack. Norris made a bunch of these, but most of these were made in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that's where they got the terminology. If you say Oklahoma jack, people know exactly what you're talking about. So I need to kind of go over how all this stuff works. It's a pretty neat design. Obviously you can look at it, it's very straightforward. You know, you've got the rod line pulls back on this piece, which pushes up on that piece, which pushes up on that piece, and that picks the polish rod up. You know, it's very straightforward how it works. One of the interesting things about it though is most of these pieces on here are as cast. There's very little machining done, so these are probably very easy and very cheap to make. There may have been some machining in these grooves, but as far as this chunk, this is pretty much an as cast piece. This is cast iron on steel. This is all cast iron on cast iron. This is all one casted piece. This is a casted piece. I think it's probably unmachined, as is this thing, and this part here too. It's got actually one wood bearing. There's like a big 2x4, like a piece of wood that's cut by 2x4 inches, and that's actually the bearing up here. That thing apparently lasts for generations because I don't think it's ever been changed. There is a few parts here that's been swapped, and I actually remember helping my grandpa do this when I was little. I was probably about, I don't know, 12 or 15 years old. These two pieces are this piece down here. This part's bolted down, and then this thing is cast, you know, bolted onto here. These two bolts, or I guess it's only got one bolt and it's supposed to have two. So let's talk about the rod line a little bit. When I first started taking care of this lease, there was originally, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but straight that way, pretty good ways out there, there's a black pumping unit. I don't know if you'll be able to pick it out. But anyway, the unit, the well is no longer there. We plugged the well, but the unit's still there. There was 3 wells in a row. There was that one, and then one other one, and another one. They were all 3 hooked together with a rod line like this. The one in the middle, pulled them on either end. It had these, you know, these on either end of it. And then there was 4 wells in a row in this one. There was the one behind me, the one right there where the unit's running, another one that we plugged, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's another one way down there. Anyway, we plugged it, and those 4, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 producers left and an injection well. Anyway, originally that unit that's running was at where that electric pole is, and it had a rod line that came up. It had an underpull on this one, and the rod line came on past onto this Oklahoma jack, and then the rod line went the other direction towards the last well down there. It was a headache. It wasn't worth it. We electrified it, brought power to everything that needed to run, except this one well I kept just because it's old and nostalgic. Anyway, the rod line is running on these chunks of wood. This is what I use now. In the old days, you can still see remnants of them. My camera died there. Side note, there's an old Dr. Pepper bottle. I realize that's probably not super old, but it's kind of neat to me because it's probably my grandpa, or maybe my great-grandpa, that would have been out here drinking that thing and working on this rod line. Anyway, I see another piece of pipe sticking up down here if I keep them falling. So here's one. They used to be all down here. And anyway, they had these things in them. I'm hoping I can find one. Okay, this is just a remnants of one. Let's see if I can find a better one. So here is a really pristine doll head. I wanted to show you this. This is in that line of the other wells. There was one right there we plugged. You can see the dirt mound. There was one right there at the pole, and then one back there where that little unit is. Anyway, this is the old rod line that ran them. I think I'm gonna have to take this thing home. You know, it would be easy to make one of these, but it's kind of neat to have an old original one. Anyway, that's what's known as a doll head. Anyway, they would come by here and grease these or put oil on them, often crude oil, you know, every few days. I wanted to show you here what was actuating this. This little 18 American, this is just like the one I did the rebuild on. It's just got this sort of A-frame thing added and a bearing put here, and this is what would pull the rod line. So I often have y'all ask me, open the bleeder. We want to see what comes out of it. So as I was saying, this well makes about 1.7 barrels, you know, 1 3/4, something like that, of oil per day. It's got probably a 50-50 oil cut. That's just a guess. You know, it probably makes 2 or 3 barrels of water, maybe something like that, barrel or two. Not a lot. You know, one of the things I find really interesting, you know, I've had some people on my channel kind of gripe about, you know, all these wells aren't worth running, they don't make any money, you know, piece of crap. You know, this well is certainly not making anybody much money, but it's absolutely worth running. You know, that's like, what would that be? 70, like probably 70 gallons of oil a day, something like that. You know, the average US consumer uses about 2.5 gallons of petroleum a day, 2.5 gallons of gas, including plastics and other things. And you know, you do the math, this little well is old and antique and everything else as it is, makes enough oil to support about 30 people in the United States. And that's not a lot, but it's definitely some. You know, you take that away, if you take all these little junky wells away, it comes out to a significant amount. Anyway, the oil that this thing produces is a real heavy, it's a really black, thick oil. It looks a lot like, you know, used, like engine oil out of a used diesel or something. It's absolutely no gas, just a thick, heavy oil. This is a good example. You know, on the other video I did about the free oil well, the fluid pounder, whatever, you can actually see this thing pound fluid really well. And like right now, it didn't pound fluid at all. It is tag bottom. And what that's known is known as pumping off. And that means that this thing has pumped the well dry. The well has empty of fluid. If we watch this for a few minutes here, or a few strokes, it'll actually pound fluid. And basically what it's done is sort of airlocked, for lack of a better word, the pump. And it'll sort of get some fluid built back up in the well, you know, a couple inches worth. And it'll pound fluid. You can see it's not really putting anything out now. Here in just a minute, it'll pick up a slug and go to pumping, and it'll sort of hit a full barrel for a couple of strokes. While we're waiting on this, I've got an Instagram page. I don't hardly ever use it. It's the_Zach_life. I'll put a link in the description. I'm going to start putting some photos up, some old photos I've got that's not really worth making a YouTube video about, but they might be interesting to some of y'all. This thing's going a long time without hitting fluid. Maybe it'll make a few good strokes here. Anyway, you might go check it out if you're an Instagram person and hit a half barrel there. It'll probably hit a full barrel here. Clunk. Now, another half barrel. It should start slobbering a little bit out here. There comes a little bit. There's a little slobber. You know, this thing's already made about a gallon probably. At least a half gallon. You know, there's probably some water in there. You know, you can see that it's definitely got water in it, but it's, you know, quite a bit of oil. That's already a few bucks worth. But anyway, you might go check out my Instagram page if you're interested in that. There's not much on it. It's pretty blank right now, but I'm gonna start trying to use it. I've just got an old iPhone SE. I'm gonna get me another better iPhone. Well, I can see the screen good enough. You know, my little old dinky phone. It's not in my pocket. We can maybe get to using Instagram. Some of y'all might be interested in it. So I need to give a little bit of history about this lease. The lease was purchased by my great-grandpa, and he had a partner, him and his partner, in 1950. The well we just worked on is actually the newest well out here. It was dug in 1959. I think there was 2 wells out here originally when they bought the lease. It was an already established lease. and they dug about 7 or 8 more. I don't know exactly the number, but anyway, they dug, this well was dug in 1959. They dug about a well a year from 1950 to 1959. Anyway, it was purchased by my grandpa from my great-grandpa's partner, so that my grandpa and my great-grandpa were both 50-50 partners on it. Some point in the mid-60s, I don't know exactly, but anyway, this is I'm the 4th generation owner, the 4th generation operator of that well. It's been in the same business, the same family, the same whatever, operated under the same name since 1959 when it was drilled. My great-grandpa and his partner were kind of a used oil field equipment salesman. They bought and sold a bunch of junk, and this lease, being shallow and being, you know, that they drilled it all, that's where they got all the equipment for. There's probably all this stuff out here was all bought as junk iron, and that's probably why as late as the 1959 it had an Oklahoma Jack put on it. Anyway, like I said, it's been continually operated up until today. Today is for the people in the future that are watching this. This is July the 25th of 2022. Hopefully it'll be operated like this for many decades to come. Anyway, that's about the size of it. There's not much to see here. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot to see other than the fact it's just old and unique. And I hope you enjoyed this. So for the last couple of minutes here, I'm gonna back up and just let this thing run. If you listen really close, if the wind's not blowing too bad, you can hear the rod line slapping and clanging. This is a very, very common sound that used to be synonymous with the oil field, and it's a sound that's absolutely gone, like a steam locomotive. Anyway, I'm gonna back up and just let this run here for a couple of minutes.